demo, I want to go ahead and talk about how we can connect our HTML elements that we build in our HTML document to our JavaScript application. So I'm going to go ahead and start with an HTML template, and I'm just going to call this Query Selector. And I want to start by loading up the HTML body with some actual HTML elements. So the first thing I want to do is I want to have an h1 tag, and I'm going to attach an ID to the h1 tag called heading. And I'm going to go ahead and put some content in there. Hello world. And then I want to have an unordered list. So here's my unordered list. And then I'm going to have some list items in there. And each list item will have a class called team. So if I do Brewers and class equal to team, Cubs, and let's just copy that a couple times. So Cardinals, Pirates, and Reds. So these are my NL Central teams. And then lastly, I want to just go ahead and have a couple of divs. So here's a div, and I'll use the auto completion. They want to put a class there. So test1, div test2, and div test3. So we're just starting with some junky HTML. I'm going to go ahead and save this on my desktop in a new folder called Query Selector. And the convention I'm going to use is titling this index.html. I'm going to go ahead and resize this window. And then I want to view that in my browser. Okay, so this is what we have so far. We have an h1 tag. We have an unordered list with 5 list items. And then we have 3 separate divs that are on the page. Okay, so I want to integrate some JavaScript with this, and what I want to be able to do in my JavaScript is I want to be able to grab this h1 tag, or I want to be able to grab this unordered list, or I want to be able to grab these list items or these divs, and I want to be able to interact with them from JavaScript. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and have an external JavaScript file. It's called query selector.js. And down at the bottom of the page, I want to make sure all of my HTML is loaded. So I'm going to have a script where I trigger this init method. Okay, so here's my init method. It's going to reside in the query selector.js file. So I'll go ahead and create that file, query selector.js. And I'm going to create that init function, and I'm going to use the modern function syntax. So here's init. It's equal to some function that we'll define right here. Okay, and the idea here is that I want to work with a few things. So let's start by working with this h1 tag. Okay, so I want to work with that h1 tag, and the way I'm going to retrieve that h1 tag is I'm going to use document, which is like the root element in my HTML document. And then there's a method called query selector. And the query selector takes a CSS selector to select the elements that reside in my HTML page. So in this case, I want to select this heading. I want to select this h1 tag. It has an ID of heading. I can use a CSS selector to say, go select that heading element. So if I want, I can set up a variable to point at the return value from that query selector. And then if we want to take a look, we can do a console.log of that h1 element. Okay, so if we're running correctly, I'll go ahead and refresh the page. I should be able to go over to the inspector, and we should see that in my console, I have that h1 tag. Okay, so you can see how I'm selecting that h1 tag. If you want to jump ahead, for today, all I want to do is kind of look at these query selectors and see how we select our elements. But if you want to jump ahead, we can start using dot notation to get the attributes. So if I want to do, let's just say I wanted to print out the ID, I can use dot notation to grab the ID, and you'll notice it's just heading. So dot notation to grab any attribute values that you might want. So kind of jumping ahead there, but and that's to get or set any of those those attributes. So if I want, I could say, go ahead and set the H1's class name equal to my heading. And then if I log the whole H1 tag, you'll notice that I now have a class of my heading. Okay, so class is a little bit unique. I can't use .class, even though that's what it shows up as over here in the console, because it's a keyword. So again, jumping ahead a little bit. Okay, so let's kind of move forward. I want to be able to select all of these list items. So I have an unordered list with 5 list items. They're all teams. So what I want to do is I want to use the fact that they're all teams. They all have a class identifier of team. And I want to use that to select those elements. So I'm going to say, go get me all the teams as document.querySelector all this time, because I'm selecting more than one. And I'm going to say, go select all of the team elements. And again, I'm using a CSS selector. So I'm saying select all those elements. So select every element on my HTML page that has a class identifier of team. Okay, and then if I go ahead, I should be able to log those teams. And we should see that we have a node list that contains 5 items. You'll see how it uses kind of that array syntax, that it has those list items with team elements in them. Okay, so I can select them, and then I could iterate through them and work on them and stuff like that. Okay. One thing to note, again, this is jumping ahead, but a node list is not an array, and because it's not an array, I can't use some array functions like map, reduce, and filter on a node list. So if I want to take this node list and convert it over to an array, I can say teams is equal to, and then I can spread the teams. And if I do a console.log of teams now, what you'll see is that I now have an array as opposed to a node list. Okay, so again, jumping ahead, but a node list is not an array, and there's some array methods that we may want to use on those collections. So a lot of times we'll use this spread operator to do that. Okay, we'll cover the spread operator, so don't worry about that for now. But what we do care about is that I can select more than one element using this query selector all. So I'm selecting all of the elements that have a class identifier of team. Okay, and then finally we have these 3 divs. So div with a test1, test2, test3. I want to go ahead and select all of those div elements. So let all of my divs equal to document.querySelector all. And then I'm just going to give a tag-based selector. So I'm literally saying select all of the HTML elements that are divs. And if I log that, then you'll see that I have a node list of divs. And you'll see that there's exactly 3 div tags inside of my HTML document. So what this does is this gives me access to those elements that are in my HTML document. Okay, so for instance, I might want to know what the user entered in a text box. Okay, so let's skip back over to my HTML. I'm going to go ahead and add a text box. So input type equal to text. I'm going to give it an ID. ID being email, and then some kind of placeholder equal to email address. Okay, self-closing tag. So I have this email, and you'll notice that that shows up here with my placeholder. I want to go ahead and select that email, and I want to retrieve the value. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use document.querySelector. I'm going to go select the element that has an ID of email, and then I'm going to say, give me the value. And where the value comes from is that's an HTML attribute. So if I if I really know HTML and I come back over here, if I say here's the value, this would place an initial value there inside the text box. Okay, so I'm just kind of comment this out for now, but you'll see that initial value show up. That's the value attribute. So sorry about that. In the HTML, that's the value attribute. So I have the value, I load the initial value, that's the text that's there, and as I would type something in here, that value would change. So I don't want an initial value, I want a placeholder. Okay, but ultimately what I want to know is what's the value. Okay, so if I do a console.log, this will give me in real time the value that's currently in that text box. So if I go ahead and notice down here, on line 17, I logged that there is a value, and the value is an empty string. So I haven't done anything with it yet. I just loaded an initial value. That's what I'm printing. So the user goes ahead and types in a value. I type in my madisoncollege.edu email address, and you'll notice that never shows up down in my console. Okay, and what's going on here is that this init method runs when the page loads. I make the change over here in the text box. Well, I never trigger this console.log again. So what I want to do to kind of end this demo is I want to set up an event handler to grab the value out of this text box. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set up a button. Type equal to button. And I'm going to go ahead and set up an on-click event handler. So print value, print email value. Okay, so I have a event handler on this button that should trigger a method called print value. So I'm going to go ahead and set up that print value function. And what I want to do is I want to do the stuff that I was doing on line 17. So I don't want it in the initial page load. I want to copy and paste this down in my print value function. Okay, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I go ahead and refresh it. I enter my Madison College email address, and now when I trigger that event handler, you'll notice that I get bwitkowski@madisoncollege.edu. Okay, so I said that that's how I wanted to end, but I do want to make one last point, and this is an important one. Let's say I wanted to print the value, and then once I printed the value, I wanted to clear the value. Okay, so I want to do two things. I want to print the value when we're doing that with the console.log, and then secondarily, I want to clear the value so I can read the value, and then I can assign an empty string to the value. Okay, so we go ahead and refresh this. I enter my madisoncollege.edu email address, clear the console, but when I click on the button, you'll notice that I print the message. And then I also cleared the text box, and now I have the placeholder text email address there again. And where this is relevant is you'll notice I'm using document.querySelector email multiple times. Okay, so this is a really slow operation. I'm actually searching the HTML document for an element that has an ID of email. And I'm looking through this entire HTML file looking for that element that matches that ID. What I'm going to suggest is that I only want to select things once. So instead of going and using that query selector multiple times to select the same thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a variable called email field that's going to be equal to this query selector where I go select the email. Okay, so now I have a variable that references that text box, and now I can use the variable everywhere I was searching before. Okay, so I create a variable that's going to be a reference to that selection, and then I use the variable to read the value and then to assign the value to an empty string. So now if I go ahead and refresh this, it works exactly the same way. So I'll clear the console, I enter my Madison College email address, I print it, and then you'll also notice at the same time the text box text gets cleared out, and I just have the placeholder text in the email address field. Okay, so anytime I'm going to go select an element more than once, that tells me that it probably should be a reference. So I'm going to create a variable to reference that field. And to be honest with you, when I'm coding in real time, I will type out document.querySelector multiple times, and then that's what triggers me to say, oh, hey, you know, I should really refactor this code. Okay, so I actually allow it the first time. I don't necessarily set up a variable for the document.querySelector because I don't know if I'm going to use it more than once. But then on subsequent lines of code, I end up using it more than once. I come refactor it and create that variable after the fact. Okay, so we're going to be using document.querySelector to select one element and document.querySelector all to select multiple elements. And we're going to use CSS syntax to do that selection. And right now, for this first example of how to interact with the HTML, we're using kind of single purpose CSS selectors. And what I mean by that is we're selecting elements by ID, we're selecting elements by class, we're selecting elements by tag name. I can do any combination of that. So for instance, I could say I want to select all of the divs that have some particular class. Okay, so I can get more complicated, but for this first iteration, I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable with the basic CSS selectors and selecting those elements and then making sure that we have the correct references to those elements. Okay.